And start to record here. Let's just get a quick little roll call. Who's all with us? I know I heard Stephen.
Teresa.
Lorraine.
All right, Teresa and Lorraine. So the three of you guys.
Yep.
All right, perfect. Well, I know from our session yesterday. I don't know, Stephen, if Lorraine and Teresa had shared with you. I guess our introductory. Well, I guess it was our second session technically for Lorraine and Teresa. That was the first time that you saw it. Any follow up, from yesterday in terms of feedback? What went well? What didn't go well? That kind of a thing.
Not for me. Everything looks great so far. I wasn't understanding the fact that about the EMAR. So we are set up in the EMAR, but we just can't use it. Is that correct?
No, you'll be able to use it, and I can show you how to do that today. We'll either cover it on this session, depending upon kind of the status of the assessment stuff, or we can do it later today. But I definitely can cover that. The outline is this: you enter in the medications within the system here. You fax them directly from here, right, to the pharmacy, and then once they're in the system here, the EMAR is accessible to use, and I'll show you that. I think what probably decided that we need to do is at least for the first, say, balance of October, potentially November into play, is that we'll look at the just a printed MAR. If we're only dealing with 3 to 5, potentially 10 residents or something, if you guys are filling that fast by the end of the month, it's still really very, a manageable process. So we can lay that out, but certainly putting the medications in, I think, makes sense for sure. So I see, Teresa, that it looks like you didn't get a chance to get set up and get logged in yesterday.
Nope, not yesterday. No.
Okay.
I will today.
Well, again, this is just the to send the email verification, because that one from yesterday, expired. I'm sure, and we'll just resend it. So I'll just do that now. And for some reason, if that link expires by the time you get to it today, just anybody can go in, meaning Lorraine or Stephen, and just hit this send email verification, and it just brings it to the top of your list. Okay. Great. So, Stephen, what do you want to do here in terms of the agenda today?
I'm just hoping to continue where we left off yesterday. Make sure we understand the process of going through the steps of the workflow of creating a service plan, and updating through each of the different types of service plans, from preliminary to initial to the 30 quarterly and change of condition. If you can show them how to do that, just the workflow of how to move from one assessment, one care plan to the next. Okay,
great. And so just to get our terminology straight or consistent, what we had explained yesterday is that we have multiple assessments set up so far, but the ones that create the service plan are these three assessments: the functional, the licensed nurse, and the memory care level of care assessment. So these are all required to have a complete service plan. So once these are added, completed, and then marked as complete, and we talked about that a little bit yesterday, then they populate the service plan. We get some flexibility with that service plan, and I'll just put a comment in for it here. Let's say, for example, the memory care assessment, we have a question surrounding incontinence. I believe it's called elimination. And then we have some very specific questions on the functional one as to the help that's going to be required, for the staff ADL documentation right here. We can turn on and off which of those questions display on the service plan. So, for example, if there's a total of 3, we may want to turn off the one from the memory care and just really show on the service plan, here's their continence level for bowel, here it is for bladder, this is what the staff will be doing and when. That seems to make sense. We haven't gone through that refinement process yet, and that's going to be a required, step. And so, again, I hopefully after some point, today, you guys will be able to go in, generate one of each of these assessments for a sample resident, and then take a look at the service plan and say, hey, this is good, this is not what we need on here. Does that make sense?
Yep, I'll be utilizing it today.
All right, great. So what I did is
Hey,
go ahead.
Vince, could you go ahead and record a session here?
I am. I started.
Okay.
Yep, I started the recording.
Okay,
here, so
perfect.
We'll have all of this, ready to go.
You're always on top of things. Thanks, Vince.
Well, I don't know about always, but thank you. So what I did, after our meeting yesterday, is I went in and I, started to build out just a little bit of face sheet information so you guys can get an idea of what this will look like when we've got some information in here. And so, when you mouse over it, and of course, I did that by either going into the resident details here and updating it, or I can go into the resident details here. Okay, and I just started adding information in there. I added the pharmacy so we could select that. I clicked off a couple of items here so it populates on a face sheet. I put in, example spouse information, previous address. I added a doctor. We have other, folks in here. I've added his wife as both the emergency contact and the residence representative, which is what we consider the billing representative. And then put in any insurance info, any additional contacts like, son, daughter, niece, nephew, whoever else may be involved. But you can add as many contacts as you want, for a resident, so that information is available. I haven't put in any of these things here yet. Maybe a preferred hospital, if there's an ambulance provider. I'm not sure how you guys, handle that. And of course, mortuary.
It comes first.
Whoever comes to our door first.
Right. You're
supposed to chuckle, Vince.
He did.
I didn't get a harumph out of him. You guys remember that movie, Blazing Saddles?
Yes.
Terrible reference.
I don't think Steven's old enough.
The last.
That's a
Excuse me, I've got a little frog in my throat here today. The last thing that I, entered, I put in a billing contact, and I just selected, his wife for that. One of the things that I want to point out is I did, eventually, there are these configurations where the communication with these individuals can happen a couple of different ways. And so I just happened to say, hey, look at, we want to email the billing party, the invoice. So at any rate, I just went and built that out a little bit. So when we look at the resident face sheet, we're starting to get a little bit of information in here. Okay. And that's what it looks like. That's one. The other one that a lot of people.
Yeah, that's a nice face sheet.
The other one that a lot of people use is this personal data sheet. However, it doesn't have a photo. But this one really is, what do you say, I guess, based more on kind of the historical Briggs form. That's the term that I'm looking for. So at any rate, there's a couple available. Take a look at them. I got to make myself a little comment here. I'm going to write it down.
I like the picture.
I do too.
Yeah, isn't he great? I saw him yesterday. I thought he was pretty cute. He's like pre general use license on one of these stock photo places. So, at any rate, there he is. I don't know his name. Okay, so
Bart.
Yeah, Bart. Oh, that's right. It is Bart. We can change it to the Bart resident. His preferred name is going to be Bart. Okay, we go back And we've got resident sample with his preferred name, Bart. Perfect. All right, good. So what I had done for Bart is I went into the assessment, okay, and I completed 3 of them. And this is the process, right, that you need to go through. And Stephen, we covered that yesterday, that you simply, when there's nothing existing here, right, you just go in, you hit add the assessment. And for right now, we're just choosing one of the required 3. So I went in, I chose the licensed nurse one, the memory care one, and then the functional assessment. If you happen to add one and it's not the one that you wanted, that's okay, right? We go back to assessments and we just delete it. We're not stuck with it forever. So again, just an example of you're not going to break it, and you can undo what you've done, right?
Mm-hmm.
So these are, pretty important to go through. The one thing that I probably didn't go into enough detail about is 1, how these display on the service plan, but 2, how this functional assessment triggers really the ADL documentation. And so we'll cover that. So again, just to, if I were in here and I were looking at it, I would go in and I can add in my vitals. I'm not certain what this CBGs are. I know it's blood sugar, type of glucometer. So, this really follows that licensed nurse assessment that I don't know, Stephen, if you brought an example of kind of the Seasons 2-page form. That's a series of check boxes. If not, I can pull it up on the screen and reference it. But I don't know that this group is even familiar with that yet, so I don't know that it's important to point out, hey, this is.
I got it.
I'm not sure that we'll use it.
We got it, Vince.
Okay. Well, at any rate, that's what this one. That's what this one is. So when we would look at this completed one, you guys will notice on the right-hand side over here, there's an assessment report, and that is simply the question, the answer, and then any notes. And so it's shorter. And then this one says full assessment report. And the reason sometimes people want the full assessment report, and really all that's added in there would be if there was a range of answers. So they can oftentimes maybe take this to a care conference, mark it up, right? Whereas if you're just looking at this, so this one is 8 pages. And if you're just looking at the assessment report, it shrinks it to 6 because it just shows here's the question, here's the answer, and then any notes that were typed in with that particular assessment. Okay? Any questions on that?
Nope. Pretty good.
Okay. And then we did the same thing for the memory care. Right, so this one, I like downloading them to PDF because they just are a little bit more manageable for me to scroll through them and zoom in on them a little bit. So I'll just do that. We went and, completed one of these, has difficulty swallowing. There's 3 points, non-ambulatory, shower with assistance, compliant with bathing. That's 4 points, elimination, and so on. So then at the end, you can see it's a total score of 41. This individual, based upon the level of scores that are set up, will be the highest level of care. They're a level 4. And I can show you that grid. It's not,
What's the scale?
Yeah, the scale.
1 to what?
The scale right now is 0 to 20 is level 1, 21 to 30 is level 2, 31 to 40 is level 3, and 41 and over, okay, is a level 4.
Okay.
And I'm not sure of the exact pricing you guys have been quoting or whose role that is. I've seen preliminary stuff of, I think it's like at the highest level, I want to say 1,600, then 1,200, then 800, then maybe 600 or something. I'm not certain, but if you guys have that information, I'll take it so we can set up the table for it, the billing table for it. It's not the most urgent thing, okay, but you know, when we settle on that pricing, Stephen,
All right.
let's make sure
I
that
don't do pricing.
I get
I make that a point. I do not do pricing.
Who's doing this then?
No, we do that. We do that, but when it comes to pricing, I don't quote prices. I leave that up to marketing.
Okay, good
Yeah.
job.
Yeah, that's a good practice, I think, because they, you know, probably have had those.
One of you guys is gonna have to bring it up during the care conference.
About
Well,
pricing?
Yeah,
Yeah,
but it's just like, I just quote the level,
yeah.
and then I send them to marketing and quote prices. I don't want everybody totally mad at me, okay?
Well,
I don't mind them
Gus
being
is
mad at
always
me.
a good guy, and it's
No.
usually
No.
the PM
Thank
or,
you.
or Miranda as backup in case there's a significant increase
Yeah,
from 1 to a 4 or something like that.
yeah,
You
I
might
know
want to
I'm
get some
supposed to call
backup.
them, yeah. That was one of my things that we had discussed.
All
How
right,
are
so
you in regards to changing cost of plan of care?
Good if
Very
you
good.
all right, let's move
Families that may
into,
not be very
let's move
good.
into the last one.
Okay. Yes.
So that's the licensed nurse, the memory care one, and then I didn't get far enough into the functional assessment and what really happens with that. Okay, and so I sent you blanks. Okay,
Yeah,
and these blanks.
Vincent, I have a question for
Go
you.
ahead.
The memory care, once the assessment's done by the nurse, then it's my turn to go in there and do the memory care one? Or how are we gonna, how's each,
you do.
Function work.
If you're doing a service, a care plan service, and this is just my opinion, if you're doing one for somebody, you're doing them all for that person.
okay.
Correct, Vince?
Yeah, I mean, whatever kind of internally, I think you guys have, you know, decided. It certainly isn't a system requirement. I think it's a good practice, but
Yeah.
you know, I do know, you know, that, you know, some people will just stay up to speed on the level of care stuff. And then, you know, they do, you know, kind of parcel out whatever assessments are there. You,
Okay.
that
Okay,
licensed
because you
nurse
won't get-
assessment, that one,
Right.
like the licensed
So
nurse.
Teresa does the assessment. It comes back to me to decide what we are actually going to be doing for that person?
Um,
So how are we?
let's
So,
take,
I initially do the functional assessment.
Okay,
That's what I go out to do.
okay,
yeah,
I do the licensed nurse assessment.
okay. And then
You'll
I
probably
memory
do the
care?
memory care, level of care.
Okay, which
That-
is like
that-
incontinence and all
that sounds,
Right, okay.
that sounds probably more in line with the way that it'll happen is you'll go out, do the functional one and the licensed nurse.
Okay,
This licensed nurse
Right. Okay.
one, when we get to that point, certainly, you know, can trigger, right, some of these other ones that you would want in terms of supporting documentation. So, Teresa, when you go out and somebody's had a, you know, fall in the last 90 days or whatever the question is, right, you'll probably want to complete either the fall risk assessment or the mobility fall risk
Right.
criteria. And so, not that that rolls up onto the service plan. Again, it's just supporting documentation to demonstrate,
Absolutely.
you know, hey, look, these are the
Got it.
interventions, that these are the interventions that have been put into place.
okay.
Mhm.
Okay, does that
And
make,
then the caregivers, when they log in the morning, they'll be able to see that, what the responsibilities are for that day, for that client?
let's not get into caregiver logging in here yet, but yes, caregivers will be able
She
to.
jumped the gun, look at
I'm
it.
just thinking about my people.
I know, we're going to get you there, but we're not going to run out that
Okay.
far ahead here yet.
Okay, great.
All right, perfect. But
I'll
I
slow
will
down.
absolutely introduce that. So it's a good segue to the functional assessment. What I sent you yesterday was this blank assessment report. Okay?
Correct.
But what we've got here is a blank assessment with tasks. Okay? And I'm going to show you what that is. So this is what drives the ADL documentation and what the caregivers will see either on paper or on the mobile portion. Okay? And so let's just take this. You can see under, this is in reverse order of points. So if they're completely independent, no assistance required with bathing, right?
Okay,
It doesn't
yes.
trigger a task. However, once we select a response that says preparation, need of bath water and or bathing, it will, in the assessment completion screen, and I'm going to show you that next, it's going to pop up with this task that you need to schedule. So you're really going to now schedule the bath that this resident is going to need help with. So you're going to schedule it by shift, the time, right, and the days of the week. So this functional one is really critical, okay, in developing the ADL documentation. So let me go back. So again, we're still at the same point we were yesterday. Stay current on the licensed nurse, the functional, and the memory care, and the rest of this stuff, the service plan, the ADL documentation, it all is current. So again, if we just focus on the source documents, those 3 key assessments, we're in good shape.
Okay.
Okay.
Sounds good to me.
All right, so let's go into our assessments here. And because then remember, once these 3 things are done, they roll up into the service plan. So we're going to look at this functional assessment and what it does, and then we're going to look at the service plan. So when I start this, I got my reason for assessment, but here we're going to do this example of bathing. You'll see some new information down here. If I were to select the one where they don't need any assistance, there's no need to schedule anything down there. Did you see that?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
But when they require some type of assistance, okay, you can type some information here that is relative to this question. So it's still the service plan portion. But what we've added now is the task. And this language and some of the things can be changed. But what I did was, this is days. It may have had a default time, a scheduled time of something earlier. But, he likes his bath now, we'll say at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And it's going to be on Monday. Well, today's Tuesday, so let's make sure that right, Tuesday, we're going to do it 3 days a week. And then, this could be bring his, special shampoo, medicated or something or other. Okay? And we'll go ahead and we'll hit save. Takes us.
You didn't put a start date in there.
Well, it released the day that you marked it complete. But that's a good question.
Okay.
So now what happens is, you want to change, because once we start to, not on paper, but once we start to electronically document on this, it locks it down. But particularly for bathing, they're going to say, well, look, at 1 o'clock isn't working. I'm now going out to a day program on Tuesdays and Thursdays. You would stop this today, okay, and simply, you don't have to redo the assessment. All you're changing is the day, the schedule. We're not changing, because you won't be able to modify this, right? So it's not a change of condition. All you're doing is going into the existing one and modifying it, okay? So that's how we would change it. There's a couple of ways to do that. I'm just going to do it within the confines of the assessment for right now. But the other place that's available is also in the care list. So we can look at all of the things that we have scheduled for this resident and modify them, discontinue them, whatever the case may be. Okay? So.
Hey, Vince, which button did you hit?
For which?
For that one, for the care list.
The long care list. I just went into the data forms and directly into the care list.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
It's
The way-
down, but
The way that
I didn't see it.
the way that I was getting at it before was through the assessments. I went to assessment.
Okay.
I went here,
Okay.
also under each one of these. Okay.
Oh, okay.
So once we get that assessment done, what's the payoff? Well, obviously these things get copied to future assessments. So once the initial stuff is done, it's easy. But we get this care list. This would be the paper version, and I'm going to show you the electronic version. Okay. So here is the MAR report. Okay, for this resident. This happens to be 5 pages here. Hygiene at 7 a.m. Okay, dressing in the a.m. This one's at 7 o'clock. We can change these times. So right today, you can see I just tested it to make sure that everything was turned on, and it is. This gives me my electronic documentation, but this would be, paper. I didn't complete the functional assessment until basically the 1st, so that's X'd out. We would have other documentation for that. I don't want to, confuse it too much. But here is what the staff needs to do for this particular resident, which is why it's imperative, okay, that you go through the 3 assessments and just see how this all gets pulled together. So
detailed.
right.
You want them detailed. Yeah, I detail everybody. I personalize every resident.
Well, this will give you the ability to do that. Now, you know, with
Yeah, I see. Open jelly packets.
Yeah.
sure, and that's really some default. There's some really good default language in there, but if again you don't you know like you know
We
what
can
you
go ahead.
just know. So look at for bathing what we had done, right? They're only going to be able to give you know or sign off on the bathing assistance on Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday. Okay. So this is that ADL chart that the care liver. So once they're doing this on paper and it works, but you know there's certain things that you know we need to kind of get ironed out. Like there's a laundry question in there. They request weekly personal laundry service same night as their resident to have the aide change the sheets today. So on night shift, right, they'll be doing whatever every Wednesday this person's personal laundry, if that's what they're assessed for. And we can get into how you can easily get those lists by text, right? So if you just want night shift laundry, so you can post that list in the laundry room so staff have something to reference so they know who they should be going to get, then of course you'll be able to do that. So there's that. Now once you've got it on paper, okay, well, let me stick with the paper stuff. Once you, so that's what we've got as a result, the care list of doing the functional one. Now let's take a look at the service plan. Okay. Now here is the service plan that's from those 3 assessments. Again, I'm going to download this to PDF just because I like the zoom and this the flow is a little bit you know better. So we'll zoom in, and here's the service plan, and it's as of today because I've printed it. It'll always be current to whatever the assessments are that are marked complete. So if you do a change of condition or something for level of care that changes, and the other 2 are old, it doesn't matter. It pulls in the 3 most current of those assessments. Okay. And here you can see it. I want to get to one that show. Well, let me see where we have the, because some of this stuff's going to come off of here, guys. I don't know that you want everything. Let me just kind of roll through it here. Mini mental basic ADL. Okay, so we've got to turn it on. I'll turn it on. Let me make that note. What we will turn on here is it will then show the task schedule. So it'll show who is responsible, the days and time. So it's that kind of frequency that you know most service plans want. Let me make that quick note. Service plan SE. Let me pause the screen here real quick, guys. Okay. Okay. So, any questions right now? What the options are, you know, for the service plan are a few to kind of get started. One is we can show or not show various things on here from the assessment, and it's a very easy change, you know, to make. Another option sometimes can be, well, I don't want to, you know, if we've got, you know, maybe what we do is kind of a separate mini mental, and we just put the results of that on here. I guess the point is we're not stuck with everything that's on here. Right now, we've just said the default is every single question on each of those 3 assessments is on here. Now, whether you want them on here or not is a different story. So we can toggle things on and off. We can group, rename, titles and organize them in different sections. I guess I haven't really looked at this for how it's grouped. I mean, the things are obviously grouped per the assessment, but I don't know if, the resident appears from the nursing part you want, right next to the psychological mental health. So we may just want to question, should different sections be grouped with other ones? That's not a big one. And then the other thing that we can do is show or not show, the scoring. Stephen and I have talked about that because I think the use, right, of some of these documents, let me get rid of this. We are going to be put in front of families, right? And sometimes when they have a score there, they're really not focusing on anything else but the score. So
Right.
this is a good candidate, I think, to the document that you share with the families and maybe pull the scoring off because it will show everything we want to show them. The functional stuff, the individual things that we're doing, for the resident. So I think you need to, think about that too. I'll pause here a minute.
I agree. Yeah.
So Stephen, maybe you guys can have a discussion offline when you go in and complete the 3 assessments, look at the ADL documentation and the service plan and say, all right, good. Let me give you an indication of, so I think you see the overall document flow here now. Let me just pause for any kind of, clarification. What questions do we have?
So what you're saying, well, what I understand is that because in the past when I do a care plan, I don't print the points on there.
Mm-hmm.
We just totally during the care conference just totally discuss the task, and the needs of the resident instead of looking at the points.
Okay, I think that's appropriate.
So, yeah, that it just directs them to what we will be doing instead of how many points that this certain task is going to cost them.
Exactly. Okay, good. So for now, and again, this isn't one of those things we got to live with forever, and we can add stuff back in. But
right.
For now, what I'm going to do is have them hide the scoring on the service plan.
Yeah.
Okay. That
would be great.
Good. We are going to leave it visible on the assessments at this time.
Right. So we can see it as we're doing the assessment, but when it's time to do the care conference, it won't be noticed.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. There's 2 other things that I want to cover because the functional assessment is the thing that's going to really get you thinking in terms of, well, this would be easier or changes or something like that. So I want to explain 2 things as it relates really to this task portion. Okay, so the first thing is we've got our care list, right, which is the one that's generated from the assessment. And then we have this individual task list, right? So what's the scenario? You're going to say, well, we're going to do something specific to this resident, for this resident, or maybe a small group of residents, and yet we've never really assessed for it anywhere, and there's no way for the staff to document on it, okay? So we can set up individual tasks right? And I put an example in here, and it's just for meal consumption, okay?
Oh, okay.
And so what I've said is it'll say, here's a task, meal consumption, and then once I separate these with a comma, these become the choices the staff member can select. So
Awesome.
pop up at 8 in the morning, 12, it'll pop up at mealtime. For any resident this is assigned to. It could be a behavior tracking. It could be go take their dog for a walk. It could be anything, right? This just gives
Elimination. Yeah.
an independent task tool that we want to share, right? And so I'll show you how that looks on there. We then can also say, you know, hey, let's put it on the service plan so the family knows that this is what they're doing, and we're going to put it under eating. We don't have to include tasks on the service plan, so whoever it's assigned to, if we leave it and we assign it to somebody, it'll show up on their service plan under eating, okay? So now I'm going to go back and I'm going to show you for our resident sample under the task list, I've added the task. There was only one setup, so I selected hit add task and it pulls it in. And it'll be, 9 a.m., 11, and let's change this now. Well, no, this will be good. It'll be on the E1 right now. And again, we can get rid of them when they're done, meaning we can stop them and change the schedule. This sometimes is good for just maybe a month long. If somebody, are they up in the middle of the night wandering? Yes or no? A family is complaining about every time I walk in, mom's oxygen tank is empty. Well, where are you going to put that on the assessment so the staff know that they've got a document that they've checked it? This is a pretty good place to do that. Okay.
Right. So how would you end it? Would you just put it in archive tasks?
Well, if you archive it, it just fills all those out and it's done. And of course, it'll just preserve all of that electronic documentation. So whatever you were to go back and ADL charting for the month that it was in, it would show up. But then anything going forward, it's not. And, when you are, I'll point this out too, when you're managing census, right, if people are out of the building or it's on hold, residents on hold, all this electronic stuff, gets suspended, meaning staff won't be able to obviously document on things when the resident really isn't in the building, because that never happened. But at any rate, so there's the task part of it. So just know that even if, because I think the 3 assessments we have are pretty good catch-alls, even if there's something specific to a resident that's not on there, you still can add a task which builds the documentation, and we can pull it onto the service plan. So you're showing, that that's something you're doing for that resident. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
All right, great. So
I like it.
Now I'm going to show you I think we kind of looked at the electronic the handheld interface. Did we look at this at all?
No.
Okay, so this is the mobile app, and we'll have yours finalized here probably by Friday or so. I'll let you guys know, but your credentials will work on this. I've just resized a browser so it emulates the mobile app at this point. But these are some of the things that you'll be able to do. Right? Look at the resident information. Here's our resident. And let's just say we want to look at the service plan. This is just a data view, right, that the staff can take a look at. Meal consumption, frailty, whatever they need to do with incontinence. Okay. We'll add some navigation in here, but, if it were basic ADL, no. All right, he hasn't fully configured. It should show you the whole.
Vincent, is there any way we can export this out into an Excel spreadsheet for our clients? For, like, say, for instance, I've got someone responsible for 10 people that day. Can I export it out and it gives their assignments for the day?
Yeah, let me show you. We've got specific assignment reports that you can either just print, but we also have the Excel download from there if you wanted to do something different beyond that. So what we do, and you guys, we've got our report menu changing for you guys, and they'll have this ad hoc section. So just kind of bear with me. This is the old navigation. I promise you the new one here is a little bit more organized, but we just have to, finalize this. It's on the development site right now, so we're just testing it against the data, and I'll spare you all the details. But certainly by doing everything electronically, your ability to query the system and say, hey, tell me all of the baths on this day, or show a week, right? That becomes a nice function, so you can kind of plan who needs to do what, or give somebody a very an individual list for them to kind of walk around and say, hey, here's your care list for the day. These are all the things you need to do. At any rate, there's the service plan. We can see, we've got our little guy here, and it pulls in the information, and I can go back to the home menu. And so when we can record things, remotely, or at the point of care. So this oftentimes is, good for doing things like recording weights. If somebody's not in there already because they don't have any information, we just go add vitals, and we'll say, hey, this is for our resident sample. Today it was his bath, and we weighed him, and he's 124 pounds. We hit save, and now that information is in here, and you just start to build this information. Okay, so easy way to kind of record vitals. You also can do notes, nursing, right? We would add a note. This is the same functionality that's in the full web portal. You can add notes for a resident. You can select the departments, nursing, and then those kinds of things. Okay. Okay, so we've got the notes. We'll talk a little bit about the eCare, the EMAR. I know that we scheduled something on the events calendar. I think you guys know that you'll get this text in the email on the 11th, right? And there's that one. On the second page, we've got, our fax documents. You can look at the actual documents that are stored with the resident from the document management system. We also have a separate, treatment administration record. We put it on the second one because a lot of folks either just put everything on their MAR or they don't get too involved. But there is a full treatment, section to organize it that way. This is really easy to take from a phone, a resident photo, and just upload it. So as you're putting in resident photos, you don't need to take a camera, hook it to the computer, and do all that kind of stuff. So that'll be available. And then this is the exception reporting, right? Once you go electronic, you can see what things were scheduled that the staff didn't do. So let's go back. Now, as opposed to me, right, being a staff person. Now, me being a staff person, right, I think what we've decided here at first is we're going the old school way. And by that, we're just going to print all of these ADL sheets, and we're going to put them in a binder. And at the end of the shift, staff is going to go through there, right? And they're going to sign off on everything they did. I mean, that's probably the way that you're going to start. However, once we're sure that the assessments are settled, the tasks that are triggered are all good, and the staff are saying, yep, I'm signing off on the things that we're doing for folks, it's great, that information just pulls over to the eCare. So when I look at now my resident, I'm going to see that there's 2 things that are kind of within their current window that are blue, and there's 5 that are past due. Okay, I can then start to sort by group. So if I'm going to be East, which is, rooms 100 through 40, great. We can do East Group A, so staff can do it. You can search on names, those kinds of things. So as we get experience with making it easier for them to navigate, right, then I think at first it's good to leave all locations because people will be moving in and you're only going to have 1 staff member or 2 that run kind of all over the building. So we don't have to worry about that right now, but we click on the resident, and these are in red because they're late. Okay, I'm going to simply check this off with my finger, and I'm going to swipe it. That just documented that I helped this resident in the morning, did that. Walks with supervision, I took them to dining. We can change the language. So I walked them to the dining room. When we were there, I gave them assistance opening their packages. Okay. And then looks like we've got some incontinent stuff where we're emptying either their commode or urinal or something, in the room. So I'm going to do that. That one's late. At 9 o'clock, okay, staff to make the bed once daily because they're going to do bed making. Signed off on that. Here's that task. I made some changes to it, and that's what he was pinging me on. So let me just take a quick look at why we've got. So we've got 9 and 10:30. I don't want, that because it's going to be at noon, right? That's going to be at, well, actually, maybe it's more like, 1 o'clock. It's after lunch. And then it's 6 o'clock. It's after dinner. Okay. So it's only going to now show the 9 a.m. one is late. When I refresh this, it'll update it. So now, I'm sorry, it's within, the timeline here because you can tasks trigger 1 hour before and 1 hour after. And anytime 1 hour after, they turn red as being late. So we give you that 1 hour window on either side. But you see this one has this little pencil? So when I hit check, it's completed as opposed to unavailable, refused, or out of the facility. And you remember my comma separated answers?
Mm-hmm.
I guess I didn't put 75% in there. So I'm going to not save this because once I do that, it locks down that task and I'll have to redo it. So what I want to do is I'm going to go back into my task setup. And this is good, so I think you see that where we have these areas, they can be changed, right? It's not the end of the world if we don't, get anything. Okay, so now close. Now, once we start documenting on it, we may have to archive the old one and create a new one. And, it gets a little bit, that's why it's so imperative that we do as much of this proofing and understanding that we can up front, because you can get some of this stuff done. And then there's so many changes that, we basically have to redo the assessment. We have to release version 2 for you, and you lose that ability to duplicate that first time. You have to basically complete the version 2, and then it becomes something you can duplicate. At any rate, let me go back. I'm going to go into the eCare just to make sure that the data refreshes. Now when I go to check this off, I've got 0, 25, 50, 75%. I hit save, and then I swipe it. Okay? So the documentation for him, now if we were to look at his eCare list, it's going to show all of those things that I've checked off, the dressing, okay, so on, just like if I were to write it, on paper. All questions are on the first, and then the tasks are organized.
Where's the 70?
Sorry, say that again?
Where's the 75? Where's the 75% of his food intake? It doesn't say on the sheet.
Right here. Yeah, I don't know why it's not. Okay. What it should have right underneath here is the percentage.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
no, wait, I'm sorry. Maybe they have this one set up as. Here it is. I think that's what. So what will happen is for the individual tasks, they'll be associated and grouped together in descending order as pages on the back. And the reason for that is we don't restrict, like you can type, a sentence in there to select as a response. And what the issue, of course, becomes is how do we then display it right here, right? So the tasks are on the last pages, and then this is the response range. and then we just start appending by task all of this. So you would just have to be able to go in and you would look at their history, 0, 0, 0. Well, okay, no wonder we have unintended weight loss. We go in to the assessment, we add an assessment, we say, here's weight loss or gain, current weight, we put that in, whatever, it was 124. And then these are the forms that we were, I don't know if this is in conditions that put resident at risk for unplanned. Cancer, renal, they don't have those, so no. And I forget how this whole report, actually looks, but Stephen, I think you've got, that example. And it really was just a series of, I think, check boxes, yes or no. So, any rate, let's not, worry about these, but you can see eventually that'll be the direction. Okay, and there's various weight loss reports and that kind of stuff. So anyhow, I'm going to pause here and just again reiterate how important it is to go in and do the functional, the 3 assessments and look at the service plan, because that'll give us our marching orders for Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. So when hopefully you're on site. And again, if there's no deal breakers in there, let's not put too much pressure on ourselves. I mean, we can adjust these in the following week and stuff, but I think it really is important to get our best foot forward prior to putting these into the system. Okay.
I totally agree.
All right, and so what I will say, and again, I thought I was going to do this one earlier, this functional assessment, when it triggers the tasks, there's a lot of flexibility in that. So, what I'll say is if you don't, like what's either how many things are being entered, entries. So like if somebody needs assistance with bathing, let me show you one for the example. I don't want you to go into this setup. I can go into this setup. We can have somebody go into the setup for you. So this is one of those things that it's important to know, okay, what we can put in here. So let's just look at eating. Again, this displays on the service plan. However, we can toggle this on and off so it doesn't display on the service plan. We can have it insert a goal. So you can not only type in a note, you'll be able to type in a goal. If that, and we can change the language. It doesn't need to say, it could say intervention, right? Whatever you want. And then look at this as the setup. So we simply say, if this answer is selected, then type display this as the task. So we can change the task language. We can say, let's do it at 7 a.m. and 7 p.m.
Wouldn't that be at lunch, actually, because of what you're asking for?
What's that?
It could be lunch, breakfast, lunch, and dinner.
Right. So we can say insert 2 entries. One's going to be at 7 and one at, so you're exactly right. With the dietary examples, we do a default of, 8, noon, and 5, and we say do 3 entries. Okay, so we can modify the things that show up here and change those things. So just know that as you're going through that functional assessment, if it only triggers 1 entry and you think it should trigger 1 at 9 in the morning and 5, all we have to do is go in, okay, and modify this setup. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay, and then we can also modify the responses and all that kind of stuff. So I'll stop beating that dead horse because I get nervous, right? People look at them the first time and they're like, oh, we can't live with this. We'll change it. But I think it's in pretty good shape, All right. It's 4 minutes after our time, so I'll stop here.
Thank you.
All right.
We'll see you at 3.
Yep, sounds good. And I think what we'll do is we'll cover medications then if you guys don't have specific assessment stuff.
Yes, please.
Well, I will have one done when I come back.
All right, well, fantastic.
Agreed.
And, yeah, if you've got any questions.
Then we can input that one.
Can we put in a sample one when we work with you next time with a whole paperwork for them?
You know, if you wanted to go in, I think, Teresa, we set you up in yours. If you just
Yeah,
wanted to,
I'm on now. I just signed in.
All right, yeah, great.
I'm on now.
Go in and create them and, just, write down your questions, start to type them in an email, and we'll just cover them one by one or write them down, and you can bring them up and I'll answer them and, that kind of a thing.
Okay.
So whatever works. I think the important thing is, just get started somewhere is what I tell folks.
Oh, yeah, gotcha. Okay.
All right.
Thanks, Matt.
Yeah.
I appreciate it. We'll see you at 3.
All right, sounds good. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye. Bye-bye.